then the last one, Arctic Star. This one's an unusual one for me, and I decided to adopt it as a bottom fish and an emerging discovery, because my background goes right back to November 1991, when I was an analyst at PI, and I was getting the old, fax machine news release, and I saw the Diamet fax, and it came off, and I read it, and I said, oh, this changes everything. And it was really just a marginal, tiny, meaningless news release. Today, that news release, people would throw it in the trash can right away and totally ignore it. But that began the whole lac de gras boom, where eventually the entire craton, size of Switzerland, was staked, and it changed the world diamond market, and it made tons of money for myself, for people who jumped into it, and it also created that sort of glass half full frenzy, almost 90% full, so crazy you got one G10 garnet in your pail, and everybody says, you've got the next big discovery coming. Now we're at the opposite end of the extreme, where like the glass is 90% empty, and you take one more sip, and it's zero, and you're dead. So here's why I like this particular story. Chuck Fipke and Stu Blusson and the BHP team tracked indicator minerals all over the place and ended up here and slowly built up this concentric land package. De Beers had been in this area before that through monopros, because they knew this was a thick keeled craton that had been stable for a long time, is the place diamonds should be. And they had actually picked up indicator minerals suggestive of diamond potential, because they were the pioneers in this whole G10 chemistry. And so they knew there was a smoke all over. And of course they missed the boat, because the little junior Diamet figured it out, staked all this. So when they saw this happening, they had the database, and they figured, well, those guys have done their homework. Anything down here is just down ice from there. Anything down here, well, it's down ice from way over there. But we have chemistry here, and it's not up ice from there. So they staked that Hardy Lake block, and within 10 years had found 24 or so kimberlites, 1/2 to 3.5 hectare in size. Most of them were diamondiferous, but the definition of diamondiferous back then was like just in micro diamonds, and with this crazy macro-micro distinction in one dimension, whether it was 1/2 millimeter or larger. Those ratios proved to be absolutely worthless, meaningless. It was only later, until around 2000, that the CivBased system for classifying the counts as different sizes emerged as a tool to project grade. Now De Beers eventually gave up and let this lapse, because none of them were good enough to take to mini bulk sampling for macro grade. The sizes were too small for them. They didn't see potential for standalone. 20, 30 years later, this thing, the Diavik, they've looked and looked, but haven't found more. This maybe has 5 to 10 years left. Ikadia, they're now scrambling to find more, revisiting all these pipes to keep this alive. This is existing infrastructure that's hungry for mill feed. So they don't have to find a world-class scale diamond cluster that's capable of sustaining a standalone operation. This is a different type of game. It's a rethink of it, and they've had success. They've managed to find 5 new pipes by applying a different type of geophysics. And the sad thing is, De Beers never published the data that it accumulated by this, even though under assessment rules, technically if you do this work and then you file it and you give it to the public to reuse and try again. They are hoarders. They've kept all this data. So all these pipes will at some point have to be revisited. But Sequoia emerged. And the interesting thing about Jackpine was Magiscore Jr. optioned it back in 2004 and spent a couple of years on it with a very onerous farm-in deal, and then finally gave up because it really couldn't do much better than what De Beers had done. But Jackpine plotted like this. When they drilled Sequoia, Jackpine's here, and with this new type of anomaly that they tested, they came up with a very interesting curve right here. So you can see these numbers. This is what caught my attention. All of a sudden, here's a macro grade potential, which in that model system over there suggests 20 to 70 CPHT. Not good enough for like standalone, even with that size. But if the value of the gems is high, this could be a very valuable discovery. And in the 2000s, when the CivBased system came out, I actually finally had a tool whereby early stage results I could predict whether or not there was any meaningful grade potential. I couldn't predict whether there would be quality potential. Sometimes the quality was just poor. You had high grade, but very poor results. And they've also discovered, next to that Finley system that De Beers had explored, another little pipe called Arbutus with juicy looking core. Now, just because it looks pretty doesn't mean it has to have anything in it. They're awaiting caustic fusion results for that. Patrick alluded to it in his presentation earlier. This could be coming next week. And they also have 6 or so holes into the Sequoia. And what we're waiting for is validation that the initial intersection wasn't some localized fluke that isn't representative of the rest. So this company is on the threshold of suddenly being recognized as having 1 or 2 major new pipes, but it's the bigger context of the rethink of all this old information. Because I found an old paper on the internet by Barbara Scott Smith that discussed the results based on all the magnetic modeling. They said not all of the chemistry, the dispersal trains, is explained by what we have found. But they figured if there was something huge, we would have found it. So even if there's good chemistry left, we're coming from pipes, there'll be relatively small pipes. So De Beers, we walked away from this, and it became open, and the little junior staked it and is now applying a rethink to a play that perhaps was explored too soon in the exploration cycle by too big and smart a company to yield what's all potentially present there. And like there again, you can see the there's not getting much joy from the market for this discovery. So again, an emerging discovery, and all these companies have lots of paper outstanding, so you can't mount a little pump and dump, pay some fake newsletter writer to like it, and then goose the market with some fake trading to build an uptrend, and because there's no liquidity except what you're selling to the suckers. No, these are stocks that will only go up because they have fundamental results that the market understands. And even when they come out, the market will still be slow to respond because it is in such a deep funk, expecting everything in the big picture to get much worse over the next 6 to 12 months than they already are. Thank you.
Thanks for watching the video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe so that you don't miss another update.